the first episode of Careers Unfiltered. I'm Laura Hartnell. I'll be one of your hosts, along with one of my work besties, Melissa. Go ahead and say hi, Melissa.
Hey everyone, I'm Melissa, and I'm really excited to be chatting with you about Careers Unfiltered.
So let's dig in a little bit to what this podcast is going to be all about. Essentially, anything career related.
We are here to bust the myths and set your mind at ease around your career. How are you going to get there? What are you doing? What do things mean? And just overall what it's like.
Yeah, it's a bit of a crazy job market right now, and there's so much noise out there. And so us being in the career field for quite a few years now, we feel like we've got some perspective that we can bring, and we want to help people work through any of those workplace issues that they might be encountering, job search, struggles, and just help people feel more clear in their direction when it comes to their career. And so what would you say unfiltered means to you?
Ooh, unfiltered means no fluff.
No fluff.
No fluff means we're going to tell you the real perspectives, the honest experiences that we have had, but also that we have seen with, whether it's with clients or whether it's with friends or coworkers or whatever it is, giving that kind of authentic experience.
Exactly. And we want our listeners to be able to do the same thing. If you want to call in and participate on the show, because we do plan on in the near future making this a participatory show where we will have our listeners call in with their burning career questions so that we can, work through that live. So we want you to be comfortable being completely unfiltered. Tell us how it is, and that's the best way we'll be able to help you. It will be anonymous, so don't worry. Your current boss, if you've got a nightmare boss, won't be able to determine who you are. And so with that sense of anonymity, hopefully you'll be able to feel like you can be truly free to just dish. Okay, so what makes us feel like we're, a credible source to give this kind of advice? Let's talk about our backgrounds. Melissa, why don't you kick us off? Tell us about what you do and how you've been involved in the career space.
Sure. So currently, at this point in my career, I work in employer branding. So I always like to joke and say that my job is to make you want to work where I work. So positioning an organization in a way to a talent audience to help them understand what is it like to work there, what's the culture like, how are you going to be treated, how are you going to grow in your career, all of those things that you want to know when you're looking for that new opportunity. So the way that I got into that role is my background is in career development, similar to Laura. And I spent a good number of years working with individuals directly, helping them figure out their career goals, their job search strategies, getting them into the roles that they were striving for. And then from there, I shifted to, I did some time working with an HR tech company. And then I also was self-employed for a little while around brand building, working with a friend of mine. And then when the pandemic came, I didn't want to be self-employed anymore because
Abby got to wear all the hats. It's a lot of fun. I'm self-employed and I love it, but it's not without its pains from time to time.
It's true. So it's always fun to go back and forth, corporate life, entrepreneurial life. But that led me to employer branding, where I thought I still love careers. I still love helping people figure out what they want to do, have that positive impact, but now I get to do it from the opposite side. Instead of working with talent, now I am working with an organization to share the story.
Very cool. You've had a really cool pathway, lots of detours, I'm sure.
Oh, many, many detours.
And then I am a certified resume writer, but I very much focus on brand building with my clients and gaining career clarity. So I work with my clients in order to make sure they know what they want next and then help them articulate how they're going to add value in that new role or industry, and then help them get there. So developing strategies for their job search, making sure their marketing tools are ready to go, and clearly articulating why they're going to be a great fit. And then I also help people with career discovery. So maybe they're not quite sure where they want to go, but we'll work through a series of different self-reflection questions and other exercises to help them gain that clarity. So my path was a little bit jagged for sure, getting to where I am now. I love what I do now, but initially, when I graduated from my master's program, I was completely stuck. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just kind of firing off resumes willy-nilly. I had I had some really interesting lines in my resume looking back that are, I mean, I think they're kind of funny. I can't fault myself. I'm like a liberal arts student at heart, you know. So I'd learned, you know, all about Marxism and people being an extension of the machine. And I worked in a factory at one point in time. And so in my resume, I actually referenced that, which probably totally turned off most employers. Like, who the heck is this person? She's clearly crazy. So yeah, that line got scrapped out of my resume once I actually talked to a career coach and resume writer who told me your resume's a total train wreck. Like, rip it up, rip it to shreds, figure out what you want to do, and map out a pathway to get there. So that's what I did, and it worked. And I loved it so much that I started helping other students do it when I was working at the University of Waterloo. And from there, one day decided I'm just going to quit my job and do this full time. Got a whole bunch of certifications. I had a mentor in the field who was at the time Canada's foremost career transition specialist from military to civilian. So I was really lucky. I had a great mentor to help me get into this field. But here I am now. So my path was definitely kind of all over the place. Lots of forks, lots of left turns.
I love that because that's similar to how I got onto my path, was that notion of I need to talk to somebody. I need to talk to a career counselor, someone who's going to help me figure out what I was doing, because I was working in an admin job that I could not see a way out of at all. And I was not happy with it. And looking at the people around me as well and seeing that they were not satisfied in their jobs and thinking, wow, you know, they could probably benefit from talking to someone, and if I could benefit from talking to someone. And so when I started doing the research of how do I find a career counselor, what can I expect out of a career counselor, that's when I was like, yeah, I would like to be a career counselor.
Yeah.
And that's what like led me into this path.
Yeah. And sometimes it helps to just get that outside perspective to pull you out of that kind of negative thought loop, because it can be this downward spiral where if you're feeling really unhappy at work, then it starts to erode your self-confidence.
Big time.
Yeah, you're not happy, you're not motivated. It can come out kind of in not so nice ways with your family and friends. And it can be hard to get out of that, especially if you're not given any guidance, or even worse, given bad advice.
Yes. And let's just touch on the bad advice. And I think maybe we're going to do a whole episode on the bad advice. When you're in those moments looking for all of that advice, I think, you know, it's so easy to go to LinkedIn or to go somewhere and just read posts from people and see what they're talking about from that career advice perspective. And you really got to be critical thinking, like use your critical thinking skills as you're reading through that advice. And even when you're finding advice from pros like Laura or myself, you know, the advice that we're giving is good for some people, but not necessarily good for everyone. So it's always, you have to know yourself to understand what advice is good for you.
Yeah, that's such a great point. There's so much information out there. It can be super overwhelming. And you have to remember too, a lot of the times people that are putting that advice out, they're trying to sell you something, right? And so there's an agenda. And there's a lot of fear mongering to try to support that agenda, right?
Yeah.
Especially around applicant tracking software and AI. And we'll certainly dig into all of that. And it's much more nuanced, I think. And it's not nearly as scary as what a lot of people are saying it is.
No.
But we will certainly dig into that, hopefully with a guest recruiter who can shed some light on how these systems actually function. But that we'll save that for another episode, because that's a whole topic unto itself.
That is just a glimpse of what you're going to get.
Yeah.
All right. So let's just continue a little bit more with the get to know Melissa and Laura. So we talked a little bit about where we are, kind of what inspired us to get into where we go. But let's start off with, what was your first job? And What is an experience from that first job that you feel actually helps you with what you do now?
Oh, geez.
Oh,
Okay.
geez.
So my very first job was a cucumber picker. I was 13. I got hooked up with this job through like a friend of the family. So I'd, show up at the cucumber farm. I don't know if you've ever looked into how this works, but there's rows of cucumbers and they have this machine that is kind of spread out so it hits like 7 different rows. So someone in the middle drives it and then you're all sitting like on a bench with your feet up so that you can pull the cucumbers up in between your legs and throw them on a conveyor belt as it's driving down the rows of cucumbers. So definitely learned that it's important to get up and stretch your lower back. And, now I work in front of a computer most of the day. So same thing, get up, stretch your back, stretch your shoulders out. Definitely important. What was super funny about that job though is 13-year-old me, I got promoted the next summer to be the driver and be in charge of all the other people picking cucumbers who were like 17, 18-year-old boys who wanted to take lots of breaks to smoke pot. So productivity was not very high. And I tried to motivate them, but it was a challenge. It was definitely a challenge. I don't know necessarily what lesson I can take from that. I'll have to reflect on that a little more deeply, but maybe don't throw a 14-year-old into the supervisory role with a bunch of boys who want to goof around all day.
That is fair. That is fair.
How about you?
Okay. Well, mine is bizarre, not in a different way. So my first job was working for my mom at psychic fairs. So I was her front person, is what it was called. So I worked at the front of her booth, and I essentially had to sell the services of my mom to the people passing by. So get them essentially to sign up for psychic readings. That was my first job.
So like business development.
So it was business development. So that was it was always it was so much fun doing it, like all the psychics that were there, and it was like such a neat little community with everybody, and everybody cared about each other, and everybody was friends. And the other psychics, they would always make a big deal about my brother and my sister and I being there, and like if one of us was just hanging out with nothing to do, they'd be like, oh, come over and help me. So that was pretty neat. But I think the thing that I learned in that role that still I would say is applied through most of my jobs, most of my professional jobs, would be that aspect of like understanding who you're talking to and positioning what you're saying to them to like capture their interest.
Right.
And get them. So it's different, like trying to sell a psychic reading to like, a 60-year-old man than to a 25-year-old woman.
Oh, okay. What an interesting first experience. Totally unique. But also that's a great lesson that you got out of that, and something that is super helpful throughout your professional life, even just your day-to-day life, outside of work even, is being able to communicate effectively with different audiences, how to connect with them.
Yeah. And then of course, I have to explain to them like, why would the reading from my mom be different or better than the reading from someone over there?
Right.
So then having to like describe the way that she does her stuff.
Yeah, and understand her differentiators and her unique selling proposition.
Her USP. Yeah.
Oh, that's so neat. Do people come with questions about their careers?
You know what? Lots of people do. And my mom she still does psychic readings, and she gets a lot of people and they talk about careers.
Okay. I love that.
So every now and then she calls me up. She's like, Melissa, I'm here with a client. I have a question.
Yeah, you get the psychic prediction. I don't know much about that world, but like you get the psychic perspective, let's say, with the grounded practical advice. I think that's a great combo.
Right?
Okay, let's talk about maybe some horror stories, because everyone's had, whether it's a wacky workplace situation, a bad boss, there's no shortage of horror stories out there. Do you have one that comes to mind?
Yeah, so I would say my most what am I going to call it? Experience that I liked the least, let's put it that way. I was working at a bank, and I just felt I felt very used by the branch manager, that she literally hired me. She hired me with the under the pretense of it's a full-time role. We would love for you to be able to do this. And, I could see growth for you. So I'm like, oh, sure, why not? I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing. Let's go for it. But then get into the role, and all of a sudden, all I was doing was vacation coverages all over the place. And then she asked me if I wanted to be a financial advisor. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm like, really, it's not really my strength. And she got mad at me and she fired me. Oh, it's like, what is this? It was very, very bizarre. I was like, I'm like, I'm pretty sure you just brought me in here just to get yourself some coverage over the summer and really had no intention of keeping me. So I did not love that at all.
That's a bummer.
It's a bummer. And just to say, I've like to this day will not bank with that bank. Or you can like sign up for like anything that's associated with that bank, or like rewards programs, anything. I'm like, no, thank you. So just remember.
Yeah, that's a
impressions
great lesson.
last forever.
That's right. How you treat your people, corporations out there.
Yes.
This will affect your brand image, and ultimately who's going to buy your product or support your business. So
Exactly.
yeah, treat your people well is the moral of the story.
And what is yours?
Okay. Well, I can't get into too many details about the ultimate one because it involves some pretty bad things. I came into an experience, a department that had just experienced a ton of turnover. Like half the department had left either because they had been fired, justifiably so, given what had gone down previously, or people left because they were scared and the whole experience had tainted their work there. So needless to say, it was a very tense environment, very like a skeleton crew. Everyone's on edge. There was a lot of lawsuits happening at the time.
This is very mysterious.
Yeah, I don't want to get slapped with like a defamation lawsuit or anything, so I probably shouldn't divulge too much information, although I'm sure you could probably read about it in the local papers if you dig back far enough. But one of the things that was most disappointing about that whole experience was when I started, I was doing kind of like an administrative role. I was assisting, it was at a university, and I was assisting the exam center, making sure all the exams were ready to go, and scheduling the proctors, scheduling the students, making sure they had everything they needed given their different accommodations. And so I started the role. I was excited to be there, but I wanted more than that. So I was, trying to put the word out to my manager was great, but he really couldn't, there was no real room for me to grow within that specific function. But I wanted to work more as an advisor directly with students. And the manager that oversaw the advisors, she had come to me on multiple occasions and was like, between you, me, and these four walls, you'd be a great advisor. We'd love to kind of work you into that role. So I'm like, yay, I have a pathway, I have a progression here. But then when it came time to apply, I did. And they rejected me. I didn't even get an interview. So it just felt like I was being told one thing, but in reality, they had a different agenda. And I don't know, a different director had come in and they'd kind of changed around some of the requirements. I had a master's degree, but they decided they wanted to go with people who had social work backgrounds. So did the role require a social work background? Probably not. But that was the criteria that they'd set up that became my obstacle, which was frustrating. And part of the reason why I just decided to abruptly quit.
That's fair.
Which was also a really funny story, because when this, right before this happened, right before I gave my notice, my manager had come into my office and shut the door, and he's like, I've got to talk to you about something. We need to move your office. And I was going to go into one without a window.
Oh.
And I said, oh, you better sit down. And then I told him that I was leaving, right? That I wanted to leave the role. And he was like, oh no, the last time I moved someone out of their office into a different office, they quit too. So he's got this like association now between having to relocate people between offices and having them quit. So it was amicable though. I stayed around for actually the rest of the semester to help train the new person, and so it was all good. But it was an interesting experience, to say the least.
It's always like, when you look back at these experiences, it's so interesting because you can always find like, oh, here's all the good stuff, but then how much does the bad just how does it impact your future decisions? That's what I always think about those bad career experiences.
Yeah.
Is that it does. Like, it sits with us.
Yeah.
How does that impact what we're going to be, the decisions that we're making later, or when opportunities are presented to us? You know, how does it affect how we evaluate something?
Yeah. And another thing with that particular role, and I'm sure this happens in a lot of different organizations, was I was on a contract, but they had this bizarre structure where if you're a contract worker, it doesn't matter if your contract was renewed year after year, you're still an external employee. So you do not get access to internal roles, and you can't apply to internal roles. So I was constantly, when I was working there, trying to get over into the career center, because that just seemed like such a better fit for me. I was excited about that type of work, and I thought I'd do great at that. And so I would apply, but I always had to apply as an external candidate.
Yeah.
And the people who had applied internally, the manager of the whatever department or unit that role was being hired for, they had to actually write a letter outlining why the internal candidate wasn't the right fit if they were going to reject them. So it was just barrier after barrier, really challenging to get that full-time position, get that internal status as a contract worker. So that was incredibly frustrating. And like you, to this day, when I talk to people who are interested in working in the post-secondary space, I will advise them of this. I'll say, beware. This particular institution I know has a lot of restrictions around contract workers and the mobility of those workers.
Yeah, I got to tell you, for years and years, I wanted to work at a post-secondary career center. Like, it was the goal, the ultimate thing. And I finally got a job interview for it, and I felt so amazing. And my kiddo he was still a baby, and he was not a good sleeper. And my delightful husband was like, "No, you have this job interview tomorrow." He's like, "Go get earplugs. You're gonna sleep. I'll be up with the kid all night. It's fine." And he literally was having a horrible night. He took our son out, driving at 3 a.m. just to get him to go to sleep and be quiet. And oh, these sakes. It was so ridiculous just to have this interview. So then I have this interview, and the next day I was like, you know what? It's not what I want anymore. And I sat and I evaluated, thinking about, where am I at in my life? What are my needs in my life? How have my values shifted since, this was the beginning of my goal? I'm like, it doesn't fit anymore. I don't want it. And I literally wrote in, I was like, thank you for your time, but I am rejecting you. And then that's what actually launched me into setting up, going down the self-employed path.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's, yeah.
Yeah, which I think sometimes that rejection can embolden you, right? Like, that's what I felt. Like, every time I've been rejected from something, I'm like, well, I'm going to prove how great I am, and what you're missing kind of mentality. And it's pushed me to do something that maybe I'd been just kind of thinking about or wasn't quite sure about, but it just gives me that extra boost, I guess, that I need in order to prove myself. But I know that that's not everyone's experience, right? Sometimes those rejections that hits hard, right? It hurts, and it makes you feel like you're not worthy. Yeah. So it's a different experience for everyone. And I think it's important that people, they acknowledge those feelings. They, feel how you need to feel in order to get yourself back into that right mindset. It's not easy. No one likes to hear that, no, you didn't get the job. It's not personal most of the time, but people feel like it is, right?
It's not. I remember I asked one of the recruiters that I work closely with at work, around, what do we say to candidates who are asking, why didn't I get the job, when they're thinking that they're the perfect fit? And I loved her response was, it's not that it's not that we're rejecting you because you're not talented and you're not skilled and you don't have the right strengths and everything that fits. She's like, it's because there's one person who fits the needs of the business in this moment of time better.
Yeah.
So it could like literally be like, oh, if this same role opened up 6 months down the road or next year, you could be the perfect candidate for the role. You could be the person who's chosen. It's just in that moment of time, there's one person who fit the need that much better. That was such a valuable message for people to hear and know that.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes just having that extra awareness can shift your perspective and make you realize, okay, it's not just me.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is important for our self-esteem.
It is. It is.
Yeah, which I think is, you made another really good point about your values had shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's this misconception with a lot of people that when it comes to your career, you have to be locked in. It's like, you go off to school, or you pick up a trade or whatever the case might be. But that's it. That's the career path you're on. And so I hear this all the time from my clients too, where they're like, I'm disappointed because I thought I'd be further by now, but my career's taken some zigzags, some turns, and they think that that makes them a failure in their career. I mean, I definitely don't feel that way. I think having those different experiences can actually make you a better candidate in a way, because it gives you this kind of multi-angled perspective. You can come into an experience and see it from a different point of view because you've been in a different industry. You've worked with different teams, and you understand where priorities might shift and change within different organizations. And so I definitely would encourage people to take a step back and look at it in a different way. The fact this idea that you need to be on this linear path, just throw it out the window. I mean, it works for some people. It works for some people.
But for most, I don't think it does.
I think it's exactly because of what you said. When you do step back and you actually start to look at what are your values, what are your motivators right now, those change over time as our life changes and we evolve. And so what you decided on as a career path 10 years ago, let's say, that might not be right for you anymore. And saying goodbye to that, closing that chapter, doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means that you've changed, and that is completely okay.
Absolutely.
If you're interested in being part of an episode of Careers Unfiltered, you can head to brightsidecareers.ca/podcast. There's a short form where you can share a question, career dilemma, or topic you'd like us to explore. And let us know if you'd be open to a future call-in conversation. We're looking forward to hearing from you.